are a couple of pieces in your question. One was the productivity, the lame duck session, and then the other is the paralysis that had invaded the Senate, and then whether we should change the filibuster rules in order to eliminate that paralysis. First, let me get to something that I believe assisted the productivity of the lame duck session. We have been in a state of paralysis for 2 years. Part of it is the frustrations of the system in the Senate. You know, that's how we lost the crime bill, quite frankly. It passed the House by a voice vote with Lamar Smith as a co-sponsor. It came over into the Senate, and one senator can hold a lot of things up, generally. But the other part of it, I want to be really blunt here, is that the Republicans, this is not a rah-rah partisan comment, the Republicans made the bet, everybody knows it, once the '08 elections occurred, that they would slow down everything, they would stop everything, looking toward the 10 election to be able to say in the 10 elections the Democrats can't govern. And so we had an enormous amount of frustration on everything. Barbara Keenan's probably the greatest example of this. We had her up for the circuit, or the federal circuit. She eventually was confirmed. She was the only judge in history of Virginia who served on all 4 levels of Virginia judicial responsibilities, totally non-controversial. Governor McDonnell asked her to swear him in, to give him the oath of office. We got filibustered. You know, she came out of committee. And what does a filibuster mean? It doesn't just mean that you have a 60-vote margin. It means you have to have 30 hours of debate. And so for 30 hours, the Senate can't conduct its business while they filibuster whether or not Barbara Keenan is going to get 90 or 93 votes. And I went down the floor and I said, I'll bet you there aren't 2 Republicans who will vote against her. And actually, no one voted against her. We lost 30 hours, and she won confirmation 99-0. So that kind of thing has happened over and over again. The question, from my perspective, is someone who is I literally wrote a chapter in my last book called The Genius of the Constitution. I view myself in the Senate as something of a steward of the propriety of how our government should work. How far should you change the rules to address a problem that in large part is political? And I thought there was a very good editorial in the Washington Post a couple of days ago on this issue where they said, these are real problems, but be very careful if you change the rules by allowing a 51-vote margin as a new Congress goes into place in order to say we're going to change the rules. Think of the trouble that you can have down the line. There's a saying that the way the Constitution designed the House and the Senate was the House is the way to get things done and the Senate is the way to keep things from getting done. And a lot of times that's frustrating.
But Senator Udall is not asking to change the number of votes required to get cloture.
Yeah, there's good stuff in what Tom Udall has been doing. Particular things like secret holes. If you're going to put a hole in somebody, stand up and say so. I do. You know, I don't agree with that. I don't like a lot of these things. But the difficulty on this, and where I'm trying to approach it, is that our side now is saying that you can enter into this solution process with 51 votes to get there. And that means that at the beginning of every single Congress, with 51 votes, you could dramatically change the rules of how these things work. And, you know, we lost a lot of seats a couple of months ago. I'm not sure that's a great way to go in terms of the stability of the Senate.